We're really excited to have everybody join us. We have customers from all around the world, and there are a number of customers and people who have joined this session that have done so outside of their business hours, and we really appreciate that. We have a number of libraries in Europe and in the Middle East that have joined us today, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us for this session. What I want to do is talk a little bit about there we go. The agenda today. We're going to have three sections in this meeting. First, I'll talk a little bit about ChiliFresh, how we got started, why we really exist, and really where we're going from here. After I get done with my portion of the session, I'm going to hand the baton off to Amy Michael from Brooklyn Public Library. Amy Michael has been very instrumental in assisting us with the development of our ChiliPack platform, and she has firsthand experience in how that's impacting their community engagement with the library there in Brooklyn, New York. After Amy is done, Eurus, who leads all of our tech folks in Europe, we'll be talking a little bit about tips and tricks and some things that can make your life a little bit easier using our platforms. And one of the things that he's going to focus on is statistics, which we feel are very important to what we're doing. So let's go ahead and start with a few rules here. There is if you look at the bottom of your screen, if you pull your mouse down, you'll see a Q&A button. And feel free to enter any questions that you want during the presentation, enter them in there as we're going along. And then we will answer those either at the end of each section of this presentation or at the very end. At the very end, we will have a Q&A session. And in that Q&A session, there's also a raise your hand icon at the bottom of the screen. If you want to speak your question, we can unmute your microphone and you can speak into the microphone that you've got there, and everybody can hear the question firsthand. So let's get started. ChiliFresh began in 2008. This was a difficult time on a global scale for not only libraries, but for virtually every business. This was really at the peak of this global recession that took place. And it's interesting that we began at this time because we saw a great deal of success, and I attribute that to the fact that libraries saw a huge need for the things that we offered. Let me just tell you a quick story about how we even came up with the idea of ChiliFresh. As most of you probably know, we began as a ratings and review engine, integrating into catalogs throughout the world. This came about from a part-time, actually it was a part-time temporary assignment that I had at my local library. Now, I'm not a librarian. I don't even play one on TV, but in doing this project at the library, I was actually behind the help desk one day. I believe I was pulling some cable. I was down on the floor. And I had been in and out of the library for a number of weeks, so I got to know some of the librarians at my local library. And as I was down on the floor, I looked up at the librarian that was at the reference desk, and I could see over her shoulders, which probably wasn't very polite, but I could see what she had on her screen. And on her computer screen in front of her, she had two windows open. On the left, she had her library's online catalog. And on the right-hand side of her screen, she had Amazon.com opened. And I was a little confused when I saw this, because at this point she had no customers in front of her, and she was just doing some things on the computer. And so I stood up and I walked over and I said, "Sarah, I don't understand. What are you doing? You work at the library, but you're going to go to Amazon to buy a book? I don't understand." And she says, "Oh, no. That's not it at all. What I do here is I'm looking for my next read. I don't have any customers here. I just want to find something to read next." She says, "I search the catalog to see what we have in our collection. And then I do the exact same search in Amazon to read what people say about it." peer reviews. Now, I didn't know much about libraries and I didn't know much about review engine in libraries, but so I asked her, I said, well, why aren't there reviews in the catalog? And she looked up at me like I had spiders on my face. And she said, oh, that's not possible. And I got to thinking after I went home that day why it wasn't possible. And after a little bit of research, I found out that much of what she said is really true. It really wasn't possible and feasible to have patron reviews in a catalog in a single library, because I know from my personal experience that everybody wants to read peer reviews, and it doesn't matter if it has to do with buying new tires for your car or a new telephone or a book that you're going to check out from the library. Everybody wants to read what everybody says about it, but so few people are willing to write those reviews and rate those reviews. And so based on that, it was very obvious that it would actually be decades for any library to reach any kind of critical mass in order to make a review system viable. So at this point, it became obvious that we needed to put together a crowd share uh, base of data that would be shared throughout libraries throughout the world. And that's exactly what we did. When we built this review engine, as I mentioned, we're not librarians. We leaned on a couple of librarians that we came in contact with. One was Colleen Medling from Salt Lake County Library, and the other one was Marilyn Borgendale from GMILCS, which is a consortia, mixed consortia in New England. And they really helped us in the development of this review engine. One of the things that sticks in my mind that they really wanted to stay away from was anything commercial. They didn't want us to import reviews from Amazon. They didn't want us to import reviews from Library Thing or from Goodreads. They wanted the reviews that appeared in their catalog to come from library patrons. And so that's what we did. In January of 2008, we actually launched at those two library systems. And by the time PLA came, I believe it was in March or April, we had about 50 libraries that had already implemented the review engine into their catalog. And we actually, one of the things I was most scared of is we actually launched the review engine with 0 patron reviews in it. And it was something that the two librarians that helped us develop this system insisted on, that these reviews actually came from library patrons, entered through a library catalog, moderated by a librarian, and appeared only in the library catalogs. And we've really been successful with this exact model, and we're forever grateful to the two librarians that helped us with that. Our mission in what we do at ChiliFresh is only one thing, and that is to change the way people interact with libraries. Now, the internet has changed the way that we all interact with information, and that has had a profound effect on libraries. Gosh, I remember as a child, I'd ride my bike to the library. Both of my parents worked, and that was where I spent a lot of my time wandering up and down the aisles of the library, looking for a book that might be interesting. I'm not sure that that happens as much anymore because of what the internet offers. And so we wanted to rethink what this online catalog can be and what it can do in engaging our communities in a way that is appropriate for this day and age. So we've got basically 3 platforms that we offer, and all of it has to do with the online catalog. Our book jacket cover art service is the same book jackets that you can license from Syndetics or Content Cafe. The biggest difference is, number one, we include it with all of our other products for free, and number two, if you only want our book jackets, we'll sell it to any library of any size for $1,000 a year, and that's something that is a huge benefit. Now, I would challenge any library to do an analysis of our coverage for their collection of book jackets compared to our competitors, and in fact, in every time that we've tested it, we've had a better coverage for large libraries and small libraries alike. And the reason this is so is our book jacket cover art service is a little different. We allow any librarian or any library to scan and upload images to our servers for items that we may not have. This could be a publisher that's gone out of business. Well, there's a gazillion reasons that an image wouldn't exist, but the facts are that we have libraries from all over the world that are scanning and uploading images for images that we can't get from normal sources. And so we have a much better coverage of the average collection than our competitors do. Then there's the ratings and review engine, which speaks for itself. It's a way that people can make decisions based on what other people say about their the book or the item that's in the collection. And then there's our ChiliPack platform, and that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about today. Our ChiliPack platform, interestingly enough, if a customer is subscribing to our review engine, book jacket cover art is included at no extra charge. If a customer subscribes to our ChiliPack platform, then reviews and ratings as well as book jacket cover art is included at no additional charge. Now, this is really the key elements of what we do. Everything that we're doing in the catalog is user driven. It needs to be appropriate for whatever library it is that this content is sitting in. And one of the biggest benefits that we have is the global reach. We've got libraries all over the world that are using our platforms, and with our ChiliPack platform, we're now connecting people based on literary interest and habits. One of the biggest things that is important to us is the fact that there's no commercial content. None of our platforms will ever link your customers outside of the catalog. We'll never send them to an Amazon page or to a Goodreads page so that somebody else can claim them as their customer, but rather to help you build your community. So we currently have customers right now in North and South America, throughout Europe, the Middle East, Australia, and New Zealand. And as I mentioned about the book jackets that are coming in, we have some libraries, for instance, a library in Australia. Sometimes they'll send us 1,000 book jacket graphics at one time, which not only benefits their library, but every other library in our system that may have that same ISBN. And this, because of this network of libraries that we have accumulated throughout the world, it enhances what our ChiliPack platform is. Now, ChiliPack is version 2 of our Connections platform. And we worked very diligently with our Connections platform, and about 2 years, well, a little over 2 years ago, we had been in talks with Brooklyn Public Library about helping them with some objectives that they wanted. They were one of the first BiblioCommons libraries, actually, and some of the functionality in BiblioCommons caught their eye, and they took advantage of those. But about 2 years ago, they were looking to move back to their ILS's catalog. They're an innovative Encore library, and we worked with them in co-developing this second version of Connections that we're calling ChiliPack. Amy Michael at Brooklyn Public Library has been absolutely incredible for us. Yesterday when I was talking to her, I asked her what her title is, and I don't even remember what it is, and don't even laugh. But she's absolutely a genius when it comes to knowing what her community wants and needs, and what her staff can use to benefit the community at large. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Amy to talk about how ChiliPack has impacted their library and the things that they do out there, and publicly thank her again for all of the assistance, all of the help, all of the development, and all of the direction that she's given us in building this ChiliPack platform. Amy, I'll hand the baton to you.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction, Scott. And bear with us as Scott, you need to unshare your screen, and I will share my screen. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody can see my introductory slide here.
Yep.
Thank you again, Scott, for the introduction. And like Scott said, Brooklyn Public Library and ChiliFresh have been working very closely together for almost exactly 2 years. I think we started talking in late summer of 2017 as we knew that the library was going to transition over to using the Encore catalog. So since then, we've been in regular contact with each other as we've been developing this ChiliPack product for what the library needed. So we know each other very well. And so thank you again. What I'm going to do is actually, like Scott said, I'm going to talk in depth about how Brooklyn Public Library has adapted and modified the ChiliPack platform in our own catalog. And actually, I wanted to begin my demo with clarifying a little bit how our mission and what we're trying to do with this product is somewhat of a subcategory of the mission of ChiliFresh and what Scott shared. So while Scott says that the mission of ChiliFresh is to help libraries remain the center of their communities in the digital age, we agree with that. But the way Brooklyn has chosen to implement the ChiliPack platform is really use the products, the different product types within ChiliPack to really surface and celebrate the expertise of our staff. And so essentially what we're doing is we're using ChiliPack to put our staff expertise front and center within our catalog and use that staff expertise as a way to help people connect with their libraries. So definitely in line with what Scott mentioned, but we have a slightly more specific spin on it. And before I advance my slide, I wanted to also preface this with saying that we had a very specific service out of the library that was the driving force for the creation of ChiliPack in general. So I'm actually going to begin, my first couple of slides are introducing to you our service, which is an online reader's advisory service, and explaining how that service works. And because that service is the reason why Brooklyn Public Library has so much staff-generated content to play with. So Book Match is the name of Brooklyn Public Library's online readers advisory service. We launched this service 5 years ago. Actually, we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, so we launched it in August of 2014. And Book Match is a way that a patron can write to us through our question point ticketing system. The URL for that form is up there at the top if you want to check it out. But it's essentially just an online form. You don't need a library card to write to us. You share what you like to read in the online form, and you can optionally share what you don't like to read, or what types of books you're looking for, what formats you're looking for. You submit that form to the library, and then we have a committee of librarians who sees all those requests come through and claim them. So essentially, we have a committee of librarians who personally receives or claims each one of these reader requests and answers it. So essentially you can write to the library, tell us what you like to read, and a librarian will write back to you in about 2 weeks with a customized reading list of about 5 titles for you, just based on what you wrote to us. So this diagram is how that service works. You write to us, we receive it, when we send that recommendation back to the user. Here's an example of the kinds of questions we get. We get wonderful, wonderful questions from all over. People really do open up to us and tell us what they like, and sometimes they share many different kinds of things, and it's our job to piece that together. So this is an example of a question. We actually recently got this question, and this is an example of the kind of response that you can expect to get from a librarian. The service is, even though it's online, and we're not directly communicating face-to-face with this person, and we're not able to have a conversation with them about what they want to read, we really try to make it as personal as possible. So we try to read between the lines of what that person shared and write back to them, showing that it's a human being who's tried to puzzle out what this person likes to read and recommend titles to them. One of the key parts of this service that they not only hear back from a librarian about books that they might like, but every single response includes a link to a reading list in our catalog. So this book match service was the reason when we switched over to Encore, which did not have a book list functionality in place. It was one of the key reasons we started working with ChiliFresh, because we had this service. It was essential to us that we had a catalog which allowed us to make lists and share those lists with patrons. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to go ahead and walk through some of the key features of this list making functionality in our catalog. And actually, I could speak for quite a long time about this, because as Scott mentioned, we've spent a long time building out this capability. But it's not just about making the lists and shelves, it's all the ways that we plug that content back into our catalog and use these staff-generated lists to discover, to surface some of the wonderful books we have in our catalog. All the ways that we're using these digital lists to try to bring people back into the library, and all the ways here in terms of tracking that we're looking at how people are, what kinds of content that our users are engaging with, to keep ourselves honest and see how well it seems to be working. So this is my rough agenda for the next 20 minutes. Just to run through on a basic level how it works. If you search for any title in our catalog, once you are logged in with your user profile, you can add any title in our catalog to a book list right there from the catalog record. And I apologize, this is an older slide. You can see over here in the purple window that it's not wrapping quite right. But what you can do is when you click into a catalog record, you have a few buttons there that you can see for almost any item in our catalog, and you can add an item to a list or a shelf right there from the catalog record. So the difference between a list and a shelf, a list is really a collection of any kind of items. You can create a list of items in the library catalog, and additionally you can add to that list with a URL. So you can, for example, anything on the open web, you can also add to a list. So you can create a list of books and also add a link to a podcast to that list. We create lists sometimes of some of our e-resources, some of our databases, that kind of thing. We create lists of learning resources for some of our teachers, which might include books, but also websites, or other sorts of digital collections, that kinds of things. So a list is really a collection of anything, and anybody who is one of our library users can create a list. So all you need is a library card with us, and you can set up your account and create list content. A shelf is slightly different from a list in that a shelf is just a way to track your reading activity. Just a minute. Sorry about that. So a shelf is really three different kinds of things. It's still a collection of items, but a shelf can be one of three things. A shelf can be a list of catalog items that you plan to read. a shelf can be a list of catalog items that you're in progress with, and a shelf can be a list of catalog items that you've completed. So a shelf is kind of a way to just track your personal reading habits with the library. And it's different from a list, is that a list is a collection of things that you have created to share with others. You can also add to a list or a shelf from the portal. So you can do it directly from a catalog record, but you can also go, once you're logged in, you can go to the admin portal or panel and see, for example, all of your book lists in this example. And once you create a book list, or once you have a book list in mind, you can click into it. So here I've clicked into this list called Remote Mysteries, Motherhood, and Mid-Century Fiction, and then you can, from the list, you can add items or websites to the list. So this is what that looks like if you were to go into a list as your launching point and search the catalog for an item to add to the list. So that's a very quick primer over how you can create this content, and I really did keep it quite short. I'm happy to go more into it later during the Q&A, but I wanted to spend the bulk of my time sharing with everybody how the library is really leveraging this content to connect with people. So one of the things that we do, I wanted to remind people again that we have this service, Book Match, and because we have so many questions coming in, we have dozens of questions a month coming in, and each one of those questions necessitates the creation of a book list by someone who works here, a librarian. We have thousands and thousands of staff-generated lists to play with. So one of the things that we do is we keep a rotating feature on the homepage of our website. One of the members of our web team goes in and sort of handpicks some of the lists that have been recently created or that are timely or interesting, and they just plug that into our website. So one of the key things that visitors to our website see are these staff-generated reading lists. Another thing we've built into our website is the ability to link up a book list or a reading list to an event. So if you, a library staff member was putting an event in our online calendar, say the event was a craft focus event or an event with a theme of music or politics, civic engagement, no matter what it is, if you choose to add a list to that event to tie in items in our collection back to that event, you can create the list and then put the URL to that list as a link to the event. So then the list is featured underneath the library program or event. And we also have that with some of our very specialized sort of more high profile events that actually have their own section of the website. There's also a way to put list content into those things. And then different from the homepage of our website, we also have the homepage of our catalog itself, and then we use the homepage of the catalog itself as a place to publicize all the staff-generated content that is available. So the difference between the homepage of our catalog and the homepage of our website is that the feed here on the library catalog is just automatic. So if I were to go in right now and put a list together really quickly, the catalog homepage would see that that list had just been made by a staff person and would pull that in as part of this carousel here. Another way that we try to surface this content in our catalog, meaning trying to passively serve it to people as they're just using our catalog, is that if you go into a catalog record, you're just searching for something, not necessarily interested in finding lists, or maybe you're not even aware that they exist. If you go into a catalog record, and that item belongs to a list, you will see that over here on the right-hand side of the page that the catalog will go ahead and tell you that this item belongs to other kinds of lists. And we prioritize staff-created lists as well. I wanted to remind people that anybody can create a list, but what we've done is behind the scenes, whenever possible or whenever it makes sense to us, we've really designated when a staff person has created a list versus an average patron, because those patron-generated lists, that patron content has lots of value, but there are times when we really want to surface and prioritize when someone who works here or who has that expertise has made a list. So this is one way that we hope to serve people places in our catalog where they can discover new things or things related to what they're interested in. And then we built a whole separate platform that I think is primarily used by our staff, but it's accessible to anybody really. We've built a whole separate platform to really search within and browse all of our list content. So you can see here that there's a keyword search up on the top, and then we've created some filtering categories on the left, and we're improving this all the time as we think of more practical ways to help people siphon through the list. You can see that, again, we've created ways to differentiate between lists that has been generated by anybody versus lists that have been created by staff. We're creating categories of lists, so maybe it's a resource list specifically. Maybe it's a kind of list that just contains books. We're trying to think of ways to help categorize lists in ways that make sense to people and ways that might help them group while they're looking for something. We're also building in ways to filter through and find lists created by certain people. So we're trying, again, to surface that expertise of staff. And maybe you have found a list by a staff member, Brooklyn Julia, and you would like to see more of what that person has created. So we're still continuously building out ways to engage with not just the content of the list, but who created the list as well. And then, so that quickly was a way that we've tried to help people organically discover all this content in our catalog and our website. But really important to lists and shelves in general is that the owners of those lists and shelves are the people who themselves have created the content, that it's really easy for them to share it if they so choose. So a list, for example, can be public or private, and private really means that it's not necessarily discoverable in the search interface. Once you switch it to public, it will be, and you can change that categorization at any time. But even if a list is private, you can still grab the link to that list and share it with whomever you choose, as long as you're the owner of that list. So every list has an option to share the link, for example. In terms of bookshelves specifically, you can choose to make your bookshelves private, meaning they're just for you, or you can make your bookshelves public, meaning that if someone clicks into your profile, they can see what you have been adding to your shelves. But going back to the lists themselves and what you can do once you have a link, you can do all kinds of things. So one of the things that our staff does, you can actually, again, now once a list is public, anybody can grab the link and share it. You don't have to be the owner. So one thing you can do is, for example, if you work at the library, you can easily share the list to the branch Facebook page, for example, and we have staff who do that constantly as a way to keep the collection in people's minds. We spent a little bit of time really working on a way to, regardless of whether or not you're the owner of a list, to easily download the list and have a pre-formatted flyer ready to go. So I have two examples here. One, neither of them are a list that I have personally made, so I just went to that list or found it and just downloaded it. So these are really easy ways for staff to hand out at a program or to have sort of as a flyer takeaway for a book display, that kind of thing. Just have up at the info desk. So this was really important for me to help develop, to try to bring the digital back into the physical world, because there's still plenty of people in all of our libraries that engage with us in person and engage with us in paper, quite frankly. So you can see two examples here, one on the left where the owner of the list has chosen to put some annotations in there, and one on the right where the owner of the list just popped a few items on the list, but perhaps I thought it was great and wanted to share it. And we're still working on ways to build out this feature as well. There's lots of things that, lots of places for us to play and continue to improve all these features. Another thing that we did, going back to one of the things that Scott mentioned, back to your good old ratings and reviews, and the priority of the library in terms of servicing staff expertise, is we built in a way where if you are a staff user, so if the system recognizes you as a staff user, if you give an item in our collection 4 or more reviews, so if you 4-star an item or if you 5-star an item, the system automatically designates it with a little flag as a staff pick. And you don't even have to go into the catalog record to see that. If you were just browsing books about fire trucks, for example, looking for something for your kid, and you're just browsing through the catalog, if you would see one of those items pop out at you as a staff pick. It doesn't change the search relevancy rankings. It just keeps everything the same. It just gives that item a little flag if a staff member has said that it's has rated it. We do the same if someone who's designated as staff leaves a review on an item, the flag will say staff reviewed. And there's many, many other ways our marketing team and our publicity team and other people from all levels of the library are leveraging this staff content and sharing it with users. So this is an example of our bi-weekly e-newsletter called The Bookmark. And there's a section in every bookmark where 3 of our books are highlighted on a book list. And if you click into that, so this is an example, say you open that newsletter and you were interested in this title and you clicked on the link, it would take you to the catalog record, and this catalog record opens all kinds of pathways for you to click into other lists and discover even more content. So we talk a lot about how the catalog record continues to move the user forward into further into the catalog versus like you see it and then you click back into what you were doing. Here's another example of our print promotional, I guess you'd call it a magazine that we put out quarterly. It's called Off the Shelf, and we have a feature in each one of our Off the Shelf magazines that showcases one of our book lists created by staff. That's a really fun example. And then the fact that we have, we do have, like I said, we have the book match service. We have all this content being created as a direct result of patrons writing to us. But of course, any staff member can make a list on any topic they choose at any time. So this is an example of, as we know, this is what's happening right now in the United States. And we had a librarian make, you know, very neutral book list, just simply titles or websites to help understand the impeachment process. And we pitched this to reporters through our publicity department, and we had a lot of interest. We had a film team come to the library and feature our librarian. We had, of course, this screenshot. We had some a few online venues pick it up. And it really, again, it really underscores the fact that the library has staff and expertise who are willing to help you navigate through all the information out there and help you find just what you need. So the book lists really help us to underscore that. And then my last point, very quickly, Eurus will talk about this in a few minutes, but we have been working on building out a much more sophisticated metrics and admin panel to help us see how people are interacting with this content. What we talk about conversions. So, oh, I wrote conversations there, my apologies. But conversion meaning did someone look at a list and then actually place any of those items on hold? Is it creating an incentive for our users to engage more with the library in some way? And then we also are working on ways for administrators of this kind of content to make decisions on behalf of the system. So for example, perhaps Brooklyn Public Library in our list content, perhaps we would like that feed to include list content from other libraries, or perhaps we prefer that not to happen, as an example. Another example is through the admin portal, say I would like to designate someone as a staff user where they don't have that patron type set up in our ILS, for example. So lots of different things we're talking through about how to behind the scenes manage and make this content even more robust. So with that, I really did try to keep it to 20 minutes. And people can feel free to ask me any question about anything I shared, and we have a little chunk of time to address that.
Amy, there's a question from Melanie Williams at Colquittland Library, and her question is, are the graphics on your calendar/book list part of ChiliFresh, your calendar software, or your website?
The graphics, meaning the book jackets? Let's see if we can find an example. Maybe this is an example? Can you repeat the question one more time, Scott?
Are the graphics on your calendar/book list part of ChiliFresh, your calendar software, or your website? Can we give Melanie a microphone so she can ask? She's asking another question there too, Eurus.
I can tell you in the meantime that I don't believe that we get our book jackets through ChiliFresh. I can also tell you, and Eurus can speak to this more, that we've done, let's go back to an example, that we've done extensive customization here on the Brooklyn end, meaning our Encore instance doesn't really look like your out-of-the-box instance, and that is a partnership between our web development team and ChiliFresh, the way that we've integrated it all together and the look and feel of it.
Okay, another question by Melanie. Do you have any information on how these features can be used for community book clubs?
I think the most obvious example that comes to mind is if it's staff driven. If for a very broad surface example and a very specific community example, the broad example is if we had staff who were on a general ongoing basis creating a book list targeted to book groups, just in general. So not a specific group in mind, but just constantly or regularly featuring new book lists, like, book club picks of the month for November 2019, that kind of thing. And then a more specific example is if you had a librarian on the branch level who was a little bit more embedded in a book group in their community, or maybe involved in that book club programming. If they were working with that book group to they themselves on a staff level, or via the book club group themselves generate list content that would be put back into the catalog. So, for example, say this book on the screen is the book that the book club group just read. If they said something like, the Flatlands Library Book Club group recommends other reads, or other reads similar to our book club November 2019 read, or something like that. I hope that addressed your question off the top of my head.
David Powell down in Kentucky wants you to show your email address again. And I'm just going to tell you that he's a good pen pal. We've been writing for many years, and so he's a real good pen pal. Amy has another, or excuse me, Melanie has another question. I'm thinking more about external groups who might use the features to connect with their own users and find new members via social media, or dot, dot, dot. I think that was a clarification of her question before.
Can you repeat it one more time
I'm
for the
thinking more
clarification?
about external groups who might use the features to connect with their own users or find new members via social media.
Well, I do have an example that comes to mind, and Melanie, my apologies if this really wasn't what you were getting at, but in Brooklyn, we have worked with city council members to create a list that, city council member XYZ recommends dot, 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 and then has worked with the library staff to create that reading list, which is featured in our catalog, and then that the council member themselves can create flyer collateral or social media posts or other kinds of things. So that was a really great partnership between an elected official and the library to help the elected official connect with their constituents.
Okay. And then I've got another question from an anonymous attendee. That sounds kind of ghosty. How much extra
Ominous.
work, it's ominous. It says, how much extra work is this for library staff?
Well, I'm gonna answer that question two ways. So work is the ownership of creating the content, and work is also the act of creating the list itself. So let me address those two. Let's just start with the act of creating the list itself. What we've tried to do is make the process of creating a list or reviewing an item or rating an item very quick and easy, and frankly quite intuitive. So in terms of the process of creating it, we don't do a whole lot of training within our staff because we try to make it as simple as possible. Most of our staff know that this kind of thing is possible, and they figure out how to do it themselves, or they ask a colleague to show them. And then we're trying to make it so uncomplicated that once someone shows you the basics of it, you're like, okay, I get it, and then you can go off and running with creating the content. The other half of that question is substantial, and it's a fair point, which is the act of researching and evaluating and finding content to put on a list can take a long time. So in terms of the book match service, which again, we're very fortunate to have as a driving force to create all this content, we tell our staff, treat a book match question as you would a reference desk, meaning you've gone into your ticketing system, you've claimed a question, you're about to sit down and make a list based on what this person has shared with you. And there are those of us on this call who could literally spend 10 hours doing that. But we've told our staff, just treat it like a reference desk, which is a 1-hour chunk of time. Do a great job, but get it done. Don't spend hours on it. It's never going to be perfect. Your list is never going to be the same as someone else's list. So just give yourself that boundary of time and spend 1 hour. So if you're looking to do this similarly in your own system, and you don't have a catalyst like Bookmatch to get the content made, what you could do is assign staff like a reference desk type period of time to sit down and generate some list content for your catalog.
Okay, there's one more question here from Melanie. Are there any available pamphlets, how-to guides that other libraries share as templates for our patrons to set up book lists, etc.? I'll first answer that from the ChiliFresh standpoint. What we provide is a quite extensive wiki file online that basically explains what is ChiliPack, what its purpose is for, and then how to use it. And all of that information is cut and pastable for any library to use in any promotional materials or anything that they want, if they feel like they need to give some instructions of how to use this online. We found
And I would
Amy.
say, right.
One thing I found,
I'm glad
Amy.
you.
Let me ask you this, Amy. Is it intuitive enough that people will just start creating book lists?
Um, it's definitely worth if you're trying to either get your staff to work on creating this content, or if you're trying to really drive patron engagement with creating this kind of content, it's definitely worth creating a very clear step-by-step with screenshots for either patrons or staff. We haven't done that. We've done a little bit of that with patrons. And what we hope happens is if they discover list content organically, that yes, it is intuitive enough where they can just follow the thread. And that's actually our goal, that it's so clean and so intuitive that you can just follow the thread and figure out how to do it yourself. But in terms of staff training or something of the sort, it's definitely worth creating a quick primer how to do it, because you don't want the challenge or fear, whether it's unfounded or not, to get in the way of staff creating that content.
One of the things that we tried to do when we created the review engine is to make sure that there were no instructions necessary, that it was very obvious what it was and how to use it. And my best analogy, well, some don't like the analogy. The Europeans, Australians, Asians actually too, do a much better job with the flushers on their toilets. There's always two buttons. There's a big button and a small button.
Which
In the
can
US,
confuse us.
we just have one flusher, but nobody questions what the big button and the small button is for on a toilet. And that's how we've tried to create ChiliFresh in the catalog, that it's so obvious of what it is. Sorry about the
Yeah, and
vision I created in your minds.
we've spent a lot of time on that. Thank you, Melanie, for all these questions. We've spent a lot of time on that between Brooklyn and ChiliFresh and our regular coding and development calls on this. We spent a lot of time thinking through how people might intuitively move around the catalog and integrate this functionality into that pathway. Now, in some cases, what we've done is we've put little like like pop-up windows, like you can float your mouse over it and we can explain what something is or what a button will lead you to do. So yeah, in some cases we feel we just want to give a quick explanation about something. But even recently, even 2 weeks ago, we added kind of a key component of it where we realized we were creating somewhat of a dead end for folks, and we just went ahead and took that dead end away.
One other question that Melanie has, and I'll go ahead and answer this one, is, and one final question she says, but then she typed more things, so she wasn't really telling the truth. One final question. Do you know of any libraries using Polaris ILS that have ChiliFresh? The answer is yes. There's many Polaris libraries using ChiliFresh. Most of them are using the review engine. And then there are a bunch of them that are using the first version of this platform called Connections. And the very first libraries that are going live on Polaris to ChiliPack are going live now. And we can give you a link to those libraries after the session, Melanie. Let me see. And then she says, hey, there's a question here from Mohammed in Qatar. Just as it went down. Can we have a list of item and displays real-time status of these items, available checkouts, etc.? Eurus, can you answer that one better?
Okay, so do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, currently we don't have that. On these item lists, we have a place a hold button that basically users can click and place hold from the book list right away. But it's a good point, so maybe we can put it in future. So technically we can do that, yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a slide that shows an actual list. You know, if I were, for example, on this, if I were to go over here on the right-hand side of the screen and click on Brooklyn Book Match Fantasy Horror and More, and what a user would see, they would just see a list of those items with the book jacket and, you know, other basic cataloging information. And then they'd also see a lineup of the green place a hold button, add to book list, and so on. And like Yura said, what we hope people do is that they're trained enough to go in and place a hold on it. But yes, to that comment, it would be helpful to save people the trouble and to just be able to scan a list quickly and see if an item was available or if all copies were checked out. So that's exactly the kind of thing that we constantly come, as we iterate through making this better. We always think of it from a librarian point of view and a library user point of view. What are the things that they would like to see, and what would make this really useful to them, and what kinds of things would help them to engage with their library better and keep coming back.
Perfect. Are there any more questions for Amy before she hands it over to Eurus to talk about statistics and a few tricks and tips? All right. Eurus, why don't you take control of the screen and talk a little bit about how we track all of this. One thing, but as Eurus is getting this already, one thing that we feel is so important with putting any kind of content in your catalog is making sure that that content is used. There's so many libraries all over the world that just buy enhanced content because their ILS vendor is selling it. And they don't require that vendor to provide statistics, usage statistics. One great example that I have is with our review engine, we show statistics on a daily basis. You can go in daily and see how many people are viewing the reviews. And I get a readout of statistics every night. And it's amazing to me, along with the patron reviews, we provide professional reviews side by side. The user can choose either one. It's a tab back and forth. They can see the professional reviews, which are written by New York Times and Kirkus and Guardian and so on and so forth. Or they can read the patron reviews. And it's astonishing to me that for about every 100,000 patron reviews that's done in our system, there's between 30 and 35 views of the professional reviews. People have much less interest in knowing what those professional publications have to say than what their peers have to say about the item in the catalog. And it's astonishing data. And much of the enhanced content that libraries put in their catalog is just not used by their community. And we encourage our customers to go to every one of their vendors and demand statistics, because the statistics are there. Your vendor knows how much it's being used, and then you can see if the data that they're looking at, or if the functionality is being used or not. And if it's not being used, there's no reason to spend the money for having it in there. And that's the focus of what we're doing, is we've worked through this for more than 10 years now, to try and focus only on what is useful to help center the library and the community with useful data and useful functionality in the catalog. Eurus?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just to confirm, can you hear me and do you see my screen?
Yes. Do you want to, Eurus, before you start, do you want to talk to this question about the coverage, the book jacket coverage that Eric asked from Phoenix?
So we had two questions from Eric. One was about how this coverage testing is done. And that's pretty simple. So what we do is we ask a customer to send us a list of all their unique identifiers of their bibliographic collection, such as ISBNs, UPCs, OCLC IDs, etc. And basically we are comparing which items we have covered with the book jacket out of this collection. So, and that way we can get this coverage. So how many of the collection we are covering with the actual items that we would display in library's catalog. So hope that answers the question.
And a little further along that, sorry to interrupt, a little further along that, a lot of the larger libraries, Dallas is a good example, Salt Lake County is a good example. They have the ability to run these statistics and look at them, and then they take and ask Syndetics or Baker and Taylor to run the same statistics to see what kind of coverage they have. In every instance, we have come out ahead with better coverage in the catalog. There's not been one that we've had less coverage in, and it comes down to the fact that the user or the library, I should say, has the ability to scan those items in and upload them to us.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to run his own.
And
you want to talk about that?
And the second question was about what it takes to upload the cover art to our system. So then, yeah, it's basically the graphics file and associated ID. With whether it's ISBN, UPC, and also for some libraries, they are uploading their own like custom items. It could be either some material, like book without ISBN, etc. But it does have like some custom ID in their like catalog. So we even accept custom IDs specific to particular libraries. Okay, so then moving on to tips and tricks, and we call this section tips and tricks because we often hear from customers also question about so where to find this cover art and what else is there, and we realize that we do have all these features on the admin panel, but it's not visited maybe that often by admins of the system, rather by moderators. And therefore, what we started doing a bit more than a year ago, so we started sending out monthly ratings and reviews usage statistics to our customers, and also emphasizing how it should be interpreted. Because from statistics perspective, we have a lot of different angles that we see what's happening. Meaning such as you can see here. So we are tracking so how many reviews are added by particular library. We can even track it down to location where it's like for different catalogs like Polaris and Enterprise, they have these like separate locations. So we can do all that. But one significant feature, and which is a misconception from, which used to be a misconception from our customers, is the usage of the system. Of reviews, this engine. And previously, if libraries saw that users are not adding reviews to the review engine, so they were considering that it's not used. But what really happens is that this reviews get so many views and much less additions of new reviews. And this proportion, so how many reviews are added per how many reviews are read. So it's on average throughout our system around the world, so customers around the world. So it's about 1 per 700, meaning a user will read 700 reviews or like see 700 reviews before he will post one. And also this ratio, it varies significantly between countries, between library types. But really, it's the views that matter, meaning that your users are getting the information and they choose their items based on what they have read, what other users have said. And again, so we are sending these data, and we are also sending a tip of the month, where we are also trying to introduce things that you can see and get on ChiliFresh admin panel, and meaning besides writing reviews and moderating them, accepting them, so you can also get not only statistics but other tools that I will get on to the next slides. Another thing that Amy mentioned, so we are now significantly like spending a lot of effort on new admin panel. And one of the big parts of it is also this analytics and statistics system. And for ChiliPack, so we have even more data angles that we can analyze. So already now we can track there the most popular book lists and bookshelves, meaning which are published either by users or by staff. And then so you can see how many views each of these book lists are getting. You can see items which are on book lists which have received most holds. So we are able to track which these holds are coming specifically from book lists. And then you can see how many book lists are created, how many items added to book lists, bookshelves, and how many users started using the system. And also what's significant for ChiliPack usage, so we see that this book list created per month is really a significant number. So just like instead of creating just a few by staff, so there are, in case of Brooklyn, so there are more than 500 book lists created monthly. And even also for smaller libraries, so the number is still like 20 to 40 per month. So it's the usage of book lists is really, really high. And now, as Amy explained already, so these book lists are also shared between libraries. So meaning once a book list created by like a Brooklyn user or a staff member, so it's also available in all ChiliPack using libraries around the world. And so far, we have more than 23,000 book lists already in our system that are shared and searchable using this book list search feature, as well as for ChiliPack using the ChiliPack customer libraries. So it's appearing in all these in faceted search, in this connections information, and other places wherever it links to the item. Okay, and so as I mentioned, so we are sending out also these tip of the month with statistics and with moderation reviews, and also to remind with what we realized that some customers don't know what is available on our admin panel. So not only that we provide very, very flexible customization options, meaning that about 95% of our customers are choosing default settings, so they work in general by all. But if you want, so you can customize even like your reviews settings so that you can limit your review source by library type, by region, or by language. Meaning, so if you want only to see public library written reviews, so users of public libraries written reviews, so you can see that. You can edit labels and texts that are appearing on this ChiliFresh content. You can choose sorting methods. So we have algorithms that are showing local reviews on top, and then most useful reviews next. Then you can choose whether to moderate or not reviews. And again, so 99% of our customers are choosing to moderate reviews and therefore also getting only moderated reviews and other things like that. And also at no extra cost, as mentioned before, at the beginning of the session. So our customers are getting this book jacket cover art, if meaning customers of ChiliPack and reviews and ratings. And also, we are providing with all of our products, we are providing APIs free of charge, such as reviews and ratings API, ChiliPack API for the book lists, and also cover art API. So meaning if you have development developers on your staff, so you can have very creative ways how to use ChiliFresh data. So as an example, so it's used for summer reading programs, it's used for these book carousels appearing on websites and other different features around the library website and the catalog. And of course, we also provide the widgets. So you can also get like pre-populated widgets or custom book list widgets that you can still integrate on your websites with just JavaScript code. So things like that are additional features that are coming at no extra cost from ChiliFresh admin panel. Okay, that's it from my side. Scott.
There's a comment from Eric. He says he appreciates the statistics emails that he gets on a monthly basis. Hopefully that's all useful information. I think sometimes when we've got to log in to look at something, it's difficult, but when it shows up in your mailbox, you can quickly see the data, and that's what we're trying to do, and put a few tricks and tips with it too. David Powell down in Kentucky asks if this webinar is being recorded. The answer is yes. It will be available to watch later. It's really good content. He wants his staff to watch it. We would encourage you to forward it off to your staff. What we'll also do is, for everybody that attended the session today, we'll send a follow-up email, not only with a URL where you can watch this online and share with your colleagues, but Eric asks about some URLs to some Polaris chili pack. What we'll do is we'll include a URL to the three major catalogs, one for Polaris, one from Encore, and one from Enterprise, so that you can look at the one that matches yours. We'll also include a test user that you can play around with and see as well. He says, awesome, thanks. That's what Eric says. Melanie asks, can you give an example of what different APIs you've created?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as mentioned, so we have reviews and ratings APIs, and it has full functionality, meaning you can post reviews with it, you can retrieve reviews and ratings for it, etc. So it's really, even moderation features are there, and API documentation is available once you log on to our admin panel. And it's basically on our wiki, so we can share that as well.
And from the Brooklyn Public Library standpoint, this is much further down the road, but one of our goals is to integrate the ChiliPack product suite, the ratings and reviews, and lists and shelves into our mobile app. So right now we don't have that, but we'd be leaning on ChiliFresh API to do that. And much, much further down the road, no commitment on this yet, but we would love this staff or user-generated content to be celebrated in front and center during the self-checkout process in our libraries. So our digital kiosk experience that we're having, we'd love to have a way to let people know what people like that's perhaps available at that branch. Those are two examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Very good examples. And in addition, we also have, so currently for this chili pack, we have book list API. So basically you can get a list of staff book lists and their contents. And also for cover art, so it's APIs that's used for integration in catalog. So you can also retrieve basically by providing a book identifier, so you can get like back URLs of such of the proper cover art if it exists in our collection.
Perfect. Are there any other questions that we can answer before we close out the session? Susanna, you've been very quiet in Helsinki. I'm really disappointed we haven't heard a question from you. Maybe she'll type one now. She's going to stay quiet. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for attending today. There she says hello. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. And those of you where it isn't day, it's night, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We want to have these on a regular basis, maybe a couple of times a year. We always want to hear from you of what kind of content you'd like covered in this type of session. Any suggestions or comments are always welcome. Thank you all for attending. If there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and end the session then. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a nice day, have a nice evening, have a nice night.